Oh, Lord. Matthew said, it's fine, just start with a joke. I really, really majorly don't do jokes. But I've got something for you, just in case. I'm really, really keen on Penelope Fitzgerald at the moment. I read lots and lots and lots of novels, mostly just try not to think about work, I think. And to my alarm, I've read 5 of the 7. I've got 2 left. So I'm reading her collected journalism. And I came across a story in one of her reviews of a book about Edward Lear, which said that when he heard that a great friend of his had just got a wonderful job that he very much wanted, Mr. Lear gave a shriek of joy and threw a fried whiting across the hotel dining room. My life isn't much like that. In fact, it sort of always feels as if it's quite hard work. Matthew says it's just that I am a girl of steely purpose, relentless, and that I will keep at it. I think that what I'm doing when I design, when I think about designing, when I think about the company, when I gather my energy to keep going on my rather unlikely career, I'm thinking about my mum, my lovely mum. There she is, getting married. There have been several miscaptioned photographs this week saying that that's my father. It's not, it's my grandfather. I think my father might be gnashing his teeth rather. But it's all right. Grandfather was very, very handsome, but my dad really was devastatingly handsome at the time. She's been a huge, huge inspiration to me. And it's got much easier to think about that. And I had a lovely time writing this book. I started this time last year. I knew that she was finally in the end game. She was going to die soon. She had a hunting accident 22 years ago, and she died before Christmas. She had a long time in a very sad hinterland. And I'm asked all the time, did that make me super determined, or did that make it much harder? I think that unhappiness is it's not often spoken of as being very useful. It's a great driver. I think thinking about her was often very helpful. If I put my glasses on, I can remember what I... Basically, I took what she taught me about life, about home, about everything that makes life fun, and I turned it into a business. I have to admit that's an enterprise that she wasn't 100% sure about. This is something of a talisman for me. It's exactly, well, it's a plate that commemorates the very, very sad death of Princess Charlotte in 1817. She was the daughter of George IV, and she was to have become queen, so her death threw the succession into confusion. But Mum was given this when she left Cambridge, when she and my dad parted, and it was a joke. They gave it to her as a friendly joke in memory of Charlotte. To the memory of Charlotte is actually what it says. And obviously, it became for me less of a joke after her accident, but it's always been a very simple, useful, positive, centering thing for me to think about her. This lovely tin bowl of broken pottery carries quite a lot of sort of important things for me. I read English literature at university in London. I didn't go to art school. I'll talk in a minute a little bit more about suppressed creativity, but I think I was longing to make things. And I lived in a house in Brixton with my boyfriend, Alex, and he and his brother did a lot of scavenging. They couldn't leave a skip unturned. And all the windowsills and the tops of sort of tables and things were covered in broken bits of pottery, which they had scavenged on the Thames foreshore. The notion I find sort of pleasing and romantic, and amongst them was quite a lot of spongeware. I didn't know what it was, but I found, you can see some of those spongeware, that nice blue blobby thing up at the top, and it felt very recognisable, very, very friendly. And that, I used to play with them on the windowsills, and it stayed in my mind as a delicious and desirable thing. And I don't exactly know why I started. I knew so clearly that I wanted to start a business, but I did. I think probably careers do, to some extent, run in families. My dad's an entrepreneur, so I knew it might have taught me, perhaps not to, but I seemed to be drawn to the excitement as well as the strain of growing a company. I was longing to make things. I was kind of too shy to do what I really wanted to do, which was to go into publishing. I wanted to make books, but I fell into working for two girls, friends of Alex, who were having a much more of an Edward Lear kind of a time, having a lovely, lovely time designing jerseys very successfully. I worked for them for 18 months after my degree, and something suddenly crossed over in me, and I thought, I know about my dad's business. It's suited and booted. It's very efficient. And here's Sal and Joe's business, and it's a bundle of laughs. Can I combine the two in some clever way? This is to prove that I may have been keen, I may be quite steely of purpose once I'd found what I was going to do, which I'll add on in a second, but I have very limited design skills. And spongeware suited me absolutely perfectly. And what happened was, while I was working for the Jersey Girls, I thought, right, okay, I'm going to start a business. I'm going to make something really nice. And I was looking for a present for my mum one day. 2 cups and saucers, I thought, that would be nice. And I stood in a shop, and it hit me that everything that the industry was providing had absolutely nothing to do with her very nice, colourful, relaxed, mismatched North Oxford life, how we all live now. Slightly, well, clearly the industry hadn't cottoned on to that in 1984. I think I think I may be symptomatic of something of a national condition. I think that we're interested suddenly now in manufacturing. I've been in Stoke for nearly 30 years. In the last few years, suddenly, you can't get around the place for ministers, whereas they've been notable by their absence for a long time. I think we are realising individually and nationally that perhaps we should respond to that inner thing in us that wants to make things. So I thought about those cups and saucers. I talked to a friend, a very practical friend, a graphic designer, and he said, oh yes, you've got to go to Stoke, you've got to find a model maker, you've got to draw your shapes. So I laboured. My drawings were a little bit more factual than that, the drawings of 4 shapes that I took up to Stoke. And when I got to Stoke, this is the thing that excited me, the possibility of that marvellous feeling when you set out in front of you everything you need to make something, to have a lovely, playing, creative time. I walked round the little factory that I was to work with and subsequently buy. And this is what I saw. This is how you make pottery. These are the kind of jobs that we seem to be in a bit of a dilemma about. We find it hard to talk about jobs that mean you have to wear overalls or get up early in the morning or get your hands dirty. If you come to Stoke and go around our factory, what you will definitely come out convinced of is that they're having a whale of a time. There are lots of big, handsome blokes with tattoos stripped to the waist to prove how muscular they are. And I find it constantly surprising that we seem to think it's much better to offload offshore, get rid of that stuff, because there really is more to life than margins. There's employing amazing people like this, rather than doing something appalling, you know not what, with you know not whom, the other side of the world. There's the lost picture of the bottle kiln that everyone knows. This is what Stoke looks like. It totally knocked me for a loop when I got off the train in Stoke, I had no idea of the extent of the dereliction, what the post-industrial Midlands looked like. And, right, I'm going to speed up. I just knew I wanted to turn the lights back on in one of the many, name check, abandoned factories. Now, as well as the business, Matthew and I have a family. I've never done this before. I haven't put pictures of my children up when I'm talking about the business, but it's so central. It's the question I'm asked all the time. How do you do the family and children thing when you've got Elizabeth, Kitty, Margaret, and Michael? And there we all are by the Thames in Oxfordshire last summer, or a sort of random selection of people, actually, who happened to be around when we needed to take the picture. That's how it goes. And all I can say is compromise. You will have a filthy house, and your children will quite rightly be cross with you. They have every right to be. In fact, I do think that there is a very serious question about what we're doing when we dragoon our children into making their tiny infant contribution to our economy. I would say probably we're pushing it a bit. I think we're creating a rather precarious situation. That's Michael and his friend Bibi showing off on the Land Rover. That's Matthew. The other vital ingredient, because as you know, you've seen my sketchbook, I needed help. Luckily, I married a very, very much better designer than myself, and a man who genuinely wanted me to work. I think that's a key ingredient, and perhaps not always the way. He's been incredibly generous and selfless, and we've worked together. We've shared the load. We've, at different times, both run it. And I look at the next slide and I think, why patchworks? I have talked in the book is a patchwork. I guess this is why. I thought, am I going to answer the question of why the pottery is for me? Can you have your cake and eat it? What's the secret of a career and family? And instead, what I've done is created a book which I think gives you something of the backstory to the brand. It sort of explains. It's in fact the answer. The anecdotes are the answers to the FAQs, and some I just fancied when I was writing. But there is a crucial thing. Again, suppressed creativity. Time off from boardroom disasters. I really love spending making patchwork quilts. Quite a lot of them. That was one for my mum. And that was Michael's. I'm going to finish ahead of time by just saying I don't think you can have your cake and eat it, but some standby recipes do definitely help. And I think that's me done.